So what we're going to be looking at is the South and siege mentality. Again, we talked about siege mentality, meaning that everybody is what? Attacking you, coming together. And we're going to see events that lead to siege mentality is a lot of the South's economy being solely dependent on cotton. And because of that, we're going to see that there is a social structure based off the oligarchy. So I'm going to put the social structure here because we'll be coming back to it a lot as we move through the Civil War and Reconstruction. So at the top of the Southern society, we see the planter oligarchy. That means this oligarchy, is there a lot of them? Do y'all know what the word oligarchy means? This means few. Is there a lot of people in the planter oligarchy? These people, do they own slaves? Yes. How many? We're 100 plus, right? But is there many people in the South who own 100 plus? We've talked about this in chapter 16. How many people in the South, what percentage of people in the South actually own slaves? 25%. So that means 75% of the people in the South did not what? But were those other people, 75% of it, were they vested in slavery? Yes, we even see the government. Did the government benefit from slavery? Yes, because they taxed on it, right? Did the merchants of the South, were they dependent on slavery? Yes, they would finance, they would sell, they would bring those, the shipping and all that stuff in. And then below the merchants, we have our biggest class of citizens called the yeoman farmer. This yeoman farmer, most of them did not own what? Slaves. What is below this subsistence farmer? Before we get to slaves, we have landless whites. And then we have free slaves. But do we have many? No. But they do exist, right? And then below that, what do we have? Slaves. And this is the social structure of the South. And we're going to see when we get to Reconstruction, they're going to try to maintain this. Because in Reconstruction, with the 14th and 15th and 13th Amendment, which group is going to come to being the same? It's this landless whites, free slaves, and slaves. They're all going to be the same. Do you think they like that? No. And so we are going to see eventually in Reconstruction, Jim Crow laws come out and specific organizations that are going to put fear in the slaves, former slaves, okay? But this is our social order. And is it based on a racial superiority? And those people who have slaves will defend it, but even those people who don't have slaves, will they defend the social order? Because that keeps them what? Above, and they hope one day to own a slave. We're going to see soil butchery. We talked of Manifest Destiny that leads people to moving west. We see there's anger over them being highly dependent on the northern manufacturing because they buy everything from them. They buy their food, they buy their clothing, they even buy the coffin that they're buried in from the north. But what has happened to all those prices? They're higher because of what? The tariff. We see Nat Turner's rebellion has led to stricter slave codes, and there's political issues. The nullification crisis. We already talked about the Wilmot Proviso. What party did that? The Whigs. What was preventing what to be in the Mexican sessions? Slavery. And we see antebellum abolitionist attacks. You need to know what this word is. This has been on the AP test as in DBQ. It's been a short essay. It's been in the multiple choice. You will definitely see this in one of your multiple choice. So anti doesn't mean against. This anti means before. And bellum means war. Before the war. That is what antebellum means. So what war are we referring to here? Before the Civil War, this is the antebellum period. Okay? I promise you, my first year I was here in Waxahachie, my kids were like, there was an essay about technologies, but it was in the antebellum period. I was like, oh my gosh, you could have talked about the McCormick Reaper. You could have talked about the cotton gin. You could have talked about irrigation. You could have talked about the wheel, the textile mills. And they're like, oh, we didn't know what antebellum was. I was like, we talked about this word over and over again. So anti meaning what? Before the war. Okay? They said there was a lot of abolitionist attacks. But you have to understand, not everybody in the North is an abolitionist. We do have organizations such as the American Colonization Society that are trying to move blacks back to Africa. We also see Theodore Weld writing his book, Slavery as It Is. We have William Lloyd Garrison with The Liberator. We have Wendell Phillips creating the American Anti-Slavery Society. We have Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass giving speeches about slavery. But prior to 1850, abolitionism was not popular. But with people like John Brown, which we'll get to in chapter 19, and Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, which we'll get to in chapter 19, more people start turning to the fold of abolitionism. We're going to see the reaction to the siege mentality as many Southerners will enact tighter slave codes. Southern states will issue bounties for garrison. Someone's speech had Lovejoy being killed because there was a bounty put on his head. They wanted these people to stop talking about the abolitionists of slavery. We're going to see the nullification crisis, which we did with the tariff notes. Remember those questions that we have to kept on going back through the tests on South Carolina? Brought up that idea of secession. We're going to see people defended slavery using the Bible and the Constitution, which we saw in chapter 16. Then people are going to push for the gag rule. Do y'all know what gag means? Not to like, this is gross, disgusting. To silence. Okay, you need to know this rule. I promise you, you're going to see this somewhere. The gag rule is to silence, that we cannot discuss the issue of slavery. Who do you think would propose that? A Northerner or a Southerner? A Southerner, because they do not want the issue of slavery being talked about in the halls of Congress. Because they fear if it's brought up in the halls of Congress, what could they do? Abolish it, get rid of it. And so we know abolitionists are are passionate about abolishing slavery, right? The fire eater is the opposite. They're passionate about what? Slavery. And they're going to speak about it. I think you'll see that somewhere in chapter 19, asking you about the difference between the fire eater. Okay. So on the back side of this, I keep on telling you that the Civil War is not entirely about slavery. There has been issues that have been coming up in our nation that is slowly leading to sectionalism, that is slowly leading to the proliferation of our union. Okay? These issues lead to the polarization. We've talked about the tariff, right? It only benefits the North, right? It protects them. The Southerners hate it because they have to pay what? Higher prices. The West is divided because they have to pay higher prices, sad face for them, right? But they get internal improvements, okay? The next one, we've already talked about the bank. The North likes it because it favors their industries. The South and the West oppose it because they want soft money. Do we have other issues beyond slavery that is leading to the breaking up of our union? And this is what we've been talking about all last unit. We've also talked about internal improvements. The North was divided. They kind of liked it because it brought in raw materials. But they disliked it because it drained their population, right? That safety valve. The South did not like it because when we saw the map, did the South have much? Railroads, roads, canals? No. The West liked it because it provided a way for settlers to move west and their goods to get to market. Now I'm on this last issue. Those are all issues we've been discussing. But territorial expansion, the North is going to oppose it because what type of states would it bring in? Would it bring Whig states in or Democratic states? Democratic states who possibly would give the advantage to who? The North or the South? The South. The South favored it because it would give new land, because what has happened to their land? It has lost what? Fertility, and because of soil butchery. And the West favored it because it brought in additional land. Are we having issues that is leading the sides to be against each other? And it's this stuff that really sets up the foundation for the Civil War. A lot of people cite, yes, it's slavery, but can I look at other issues that set the foundation for our breakup? Right?